So I'll make this font, I don't know, Times New Roman. And we get the same thing. These are like almost identical, but not quite. And so visually, there's just something kind of weird about it. So this is why people say that your font should either be exactly the same or totally different. Looking on here, you can't really, sorry, I'm refreshing to make all that go away. You are too big now. So you can't really misconstrue this font with this one. This one is all uppercase, and this one is not. Even though they're both sans serif fonts, one is uppercase and one is, regular case. So they look totally different. There's not really any visual ambiguity there. And you can't really get any of these mixed up because this one is serif, that's very clearly different, and this one is not. I mean, these are all very distinct from each other. So there's none of that visual ambiguity, none of that like weird vibration going on in there. And so it's really important that you limit the number of fonts you use. I say that because some WDI students' projects went a little too font happy, and it was just like, oh man, this is hard to read. So like really just pick one font and be consistent with it. One consistent font is much better than like a whole bunch of random fonts or like two kind of similar fonts that are also kind of not similar. You guys see what I'm saying? Yeah? Cool. Okay, so there's that. Let's see. Avoid black. Use 222 or 111, something like that. Use something that's slightly off black. Same goes for white. Avoid white. Use I don't know, maybe F9, 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 something like that. Straight black, like pure black and pure white, they contrast so much from each other and from everything else that even though you may not realize it, looking at sites like that can kind of wear you out visually. Like it's a lot for your eyes to take in. That can make your eyes kind of tired. And so if you look at really well-designed sites, you'll notice that almost all of them completely eschew using black and white. They'll use off colors. So this is like another solid design principle to use. And so this isn't really like opinion. I mean, this is more like design fact. It isn't really design fact, but I would say this is about as close as you can get to it. Let's see, textured background. So that's one thing she talks about in the article. Putting that background. Okay, textured backgrounds. And this is another thing where you probably don't even notice it when you're looking at a site, but it can make a really big difference. And just like with the not using black and white fonts, it's something where it's a subtle change that is all about sort of softening the visual experience. GA, let's see, does GA do it? Nope, they do not. Sorry, my computer's being so slow. So this, like, I will not, like, sorry, I'm self-advertising again. This is not like a particularly well-designed site. But if you look in the background is ever so slightly textured. And so this texture is just like, it's like a little 60 by 60 GIF where it's just some of the squares are like slightly dark and some of the squares are transparent. Two colors in the whole GIF. But when you look at this site, there's a big difference between this, the way it looks. It's much softer this way, and I wonder if you guys will be able to see it down there if I get rid of the background image. Well, no, so it doesn't really make any difference on a projector, but on a computer screen, it can make a pretty sizable difference. And when you're staring at this thing for a substantial amount of time, lessening that contrast between the background and the text can make a really big difference as well. So textured backgrounds are another really easy way. Let's see. And what else are we going to hear? No more than 3 floats. If you find yourself having to write float more than about 3 times, there's probably a more efficient way you can do things. Floats are really, really difficult to manage because they don't obey very many rules. And so if you find yourself using float, it would probably be a better situation situation in which you could use relative positioning or something like that. Sorry, Lisa, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, this is about the background. Is it possible to lessen that contrast out of the image?
Not really. Yeah, I can't think of a way of doing it. But, I mean, again, the image can be like, the one I use for that idea prompt website is probably like 800 bytes. So like not even a kilobyte. There are only 2 colors in it, and it's like 60 pixels by 60 pixels, if that. And so you don't need fancy software to make it. I mean, you can literally just go into like Paint. Well, you guys are not using Windows, but if you were, you could just go into Paint, use like spray brush tool for like a second, and pretty much good to go. There are also lots of sites where you can download textures and use them for free. And it adds a lot of like finesse and elegance to your site that people probably won't be able to put their finger on, but they'll just know that it's there. So very useful. I'll get to you 1 second, Raj. Let's see. So land yourself on floats. Let's see. Text shadow. 1 pixel of text shadow can make a really big difference. So looking here, I wonder if this one uses it. Probably not. Okay, so I'm going to add some text shadow to this. Oh, well, actually, here's another thing. Hold on, I'll turn this off first and zoom in on that. Actually, I'll come back to that. Text shadow, text shadow, text shadow. Does this have any text shadow going on? I don't think so. Nope. Okay, so I'm going to add some text shadow in. I'm going to do something like text shadow 1 pixel, 1 pixel. Actually, no, I'm going to do 0 pixels, text shadow 0, 0, 1 pixel, 0 pixels, black. I think that's right. Nope, I got it wrong. It is a big one. There we go. Wow, okay, that looks terrible. Well, but at any rate, this is what text shadow does, is it, well, gives the text a bit of a shadow. If you make it red, you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. This, like, make no mistake, looks kind of bad. But if you have bigger text, like let's say these big headers up here, on some web browsers, these look really harsh. Like some web browsers don't round the corners for you as nicely as Chrome does here. And so putting in text shadow can be a way of sort of softening this a little bit. So 1 pixel, I'll do CCC, so I'll do a light gray. Does that make a difference? Maybe if I darken it a little bit. There we go. And so now you can't really see it down there so well, but it's starting to be a little bit softer. And so that rounds out the edges a bit more. So this isn't something, as you saw, you would really want to do on all of the text. Like here, it looks really weird. But on big text, it can make a really nice difference. This anti-aliasing thing, which you can see, where are you? I was just looking at you. Oh yeah, this WebKit font smoothing thing I'm looking at right here. So this is a built-in CSS3 property that does the exact same thing. It says, hey, sort of smooth this thing out. And without it, things look much harsher. You guys can't really see that down there, but looking at this on your own computer, you would get an idea of it. So WebKit font smoothing does the same thing as text shadow, except I think it's less widely available. And let's see. Yeah, so the other thing is going borderless is very in right now. So when I say borderless, if you look on here, there aren't very many hard lines around the edges of things. Like this doesn't have any hard lines around it. It's just a solid color. And borders add in a lot of lines, and lines, even though you don't really think about them, they add a lot of visual vibration. They make a page look really busy. And so doing without lines can really add to the unity and sort of the elegance of a page. So I'll write that last one down, and then
I just have a question about better standards, and all these things are great, but how do you draw a line between the freedom and the kind of
So I'm writing all this out more for people like me, where I have no idea where to start when it comes to designing stuff. And so I'm like, well, okay, I don't know what to do. Like, there are a million things I could start with, and that's overwhelming. So I'm going to start by just applying these rules. And if I apply those rules, then I think I'm probably off to a good start, and I might have a good idea of where to go from there. Yeah, so if you really do like the design aspect of it, I feel like design is one of those things where if you're confident enough in it, then you can make your own rules. But if not, then use someone else's rules. Kind of like see how that works out. Jesse, do you have
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that like people love to argue about this stuff,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Especially the anti-aliasing. I'm so glad that you brought that up, Robin, because I listened hours about people being like, "Oh, you really shouldn't use it." Anyway, take this as a way to like add to your conversation. When you go into that interview, be like, "Hey, like I have a really nice eye for design. Even though I enjoy programming, I can still talk to Tom."
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't really even matter if the interviewer or whoever agrees with you. If you can like assert that you have an opinion on this, that's usually really compelling. A lot more compelling than just being like a yes man. Yeah, Walter.
What about colors?
What about colors? So more specifically, or
Yeah, I mean, well, you didn't really mention colors aside from like avoiding just hard black and white. But as far as the color schemes, what are some design points to keep in mind?
yeah, good question. So I really like complementary colors. Like I like colors that sort of clash against each other. I don't really know why, and probably not everyone is like that. So I really like the brightness of this red and this yellow. But I mean, if you look at pretty much any startup's webpage, they're going to use predominantly blue. And it's not going to be like blue. It's going to be like kind of a nice, like slightly muted blue. I feel like that's sort of playing it safe. I don't know. When it comes to colors, I don't think there's really a right way to do it. I mean, I think if there was a right way, it would probably be just use blue for everything because that seems to be the safest thing to do. But even that's not really appropriate for everything. So there are lots of sites out there that will that are just dedicated entirely to giving you color profiles, and like you'll put in a color you like, and they'll give you the colors that go along nicely with that, or like just nice color schemes that you can use for it. So it'll just give you different swatches, different hexadecimal values for each color, and it's basically just like, hey, plug this in, see what happens. But yeah, as for like hard and fast rules for colors, I don't really know. And a lot of you guys probably have more visual design experience than I do. I mean, anyone have opinions on colors? Well, maybe not more visual design experience. But yeah, so that's one of those things where I guess you sort of have to feel it out. But those sites that give you the swatches are a great resource. Other thoughts or tips you guys have picked up about doing all this stuff? Easy wins? Like, this is a list I just pulled out of my head in like 5 minutes. I'm sure there are lots of things I can get. Yeah.
Yes, icons, so share and share.
Oh, okay. So icons instead of text. Yeah, and I really like that because when you see text on a page, your eyes automatically go to it and try to read it. I mean, just by virtue of being human and being in a world where there's a lot of text around that you have to consume, our eyes are like trained just to glom onto text when it's there on a page and to try to read it. And so icons are a great way of sort of centralizing, streamlining the visual process, like sort of funneling, channeling where someone's visual attention should go. Because then you're not using text, you're using something else that so perfectly conveys what it is, whatever the meaning is that you want to show, but it's not text, so it's not as visually interesting. And visual interest, like, I feel like if I say something is visually interesting, that means it's good. That's not necessarily true. Visually interesting just means it draws your eyes to it, which sometimes you really don't want. Like if I put, a man cat doing backflips on here, that's sure visually interesting, but it wouldn't be a good design decision. Maybe it would. I don't know. Depends on what your audience is. What else? I mean, this is the thing about design is there's no right answer for design. I wish there was a right answer for design because it would make my life so much easier, but there's not. I mean, every single one of you is as qualified to make visual design judgments as everyone else, as me, as Jesse, as like anyone else in this class. We're all equally qualified. I mean, it's the whole beauty is in the eye of the beholder thing. And unfortunately, it's true of websites, which makes web design really, really difficult because you never know when you're done. The only test, really, of when you're done is if you say, hey, man, can you come look at this for 5 seconds? Does this look good? And if they say yes, then you're probably on the right track. They might not even be able to tell you why they said yes. They'll just say, like, yeah, it looks fine. And then you're okay. Although then you're like, oh, fine? I don't want fine. I want, like, yeah, awesome. And so even then, you're still not done. But there are some easy wins where, statistically speaking, incorporating these things lends itself to people saying, yeah, that looks good. Jesse.
Hey, so I also want to add that I'm not a designer, but I feel like I've gotten a lot of design experience by just looking for things that I really like. I'm just like, whoa, that was super cool. And then just try to copy it. Right? Write your own CSS, but just copy it. Understand how those little things put together.
Yeah. Anything else about design? Arash?
I had a question.
Uh-huh.
I know there are some galleries that you can just go and like take a look at some really cool website and they build and it's really like matching.
Yeah.
Is there any particular you come to mind?
Well, I know one to look at for things not to do, which is Reddit/r/crappy design, which we're going to look at right now because I can't really resist. Crappy design. There we go. Yeah. There we go. That's more like it. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, okay, so that's enough of that. But that's a really fun subreddit. But I'm like on the other side of that. There's also reddit.com/rdesign and reddit.com/r/webdesign. And I always feel like it's a cop-out to refer to Reddit, but there really isn't anywhere else you can get as current, constant information and like immediate feedback from other real people too. So I would just go there before I go anywhere else. There are other things like CSS Zen Garden and other sites like that, but that one hasn't been updated in a long time. So, I mean, if I wasn't sure where to start, I would probably just go to a design or web design subreddit. So before we move on, I want to talk about sort of a methodology that you use when creating a website, and that's this. Or two methodologies. There are these concepts of graceful degradation and progressive enhancement. And those sound terrifying. So that is progressive enhancement and graceful degradation. Okay, and so the official W3 World Wide Web Consortium definitions of these are graceful degradation is the practice of building your web functionality so that it provides a certain level of user experience in more modern browsers, but will also degrade gracefully to a lower level of user experience in older browsers. Progressive enhancement is similar, but it does things the other way around. You start by establishing a basic level of user experience that all browsers will be able to provide when rendering your website, but you also build in more advanced functionality that will automatically be available to browsers that can use it. Everyone get that? No, I didn't think so. So basically, the TLDR of that is graceful degradation means you start off by making your website look really good in like the latest version of Chrome. So you make it so presumably this is something you would use if your audience is a more like hip, young, tech-savvy audience. So you start off by making your site look really good in current browsers. And then after that, you start adding in tweaks so that if your grandma is looking at it in Internet Explorer 5, it still looks okay. It gracefully degrades. The quality of the website gracefully degrades. It's like Betty White, gracefully degrades. And whereas progressive enhancement is taking the opposite approach. It's starting off with an older browser, and then it's adding tweaks to that to make it look nicer in more modern browsers. So there are two sort of opposite approaches. I would say pick one and go with it. My approach is usually to do progressive enhancement, to start off making things look good in like Internet Explorer 8, just because I spent a lot of time trying to make stuff look good for Internet Explorer 8, and so that's sort of stuck, which is totally not the right way to do things, I don't think. But pick one. Don't try to like catch all as you go. Like if you try to design your site where you're trying to keep Internet Explorer 8 and Chrome version 3 million or whatever we're at right now in mind at the same time, that's a really difficult thing to do. So either start at the back and work forwards, or start at the front and work backwards. And the nice thing about using Bootstrap and Foundation and like all these other front-end frameworks is that they take care of a lot of that for you. So Bootstrap is designed to still look okay, to gracefully degrade in older browsers. It doesn't look perfect, but it looks okay. jQuery does the same thing, where it tries to, it has things built in so that, for instance, AJAX requests work the same way they do in Chrome as they do in IE 7. And so when we get to Foundation in a second, you'll see that it includes this thing called Modernizer, which gives old web browsers the same functionalities of JavaScript that modern browsers do. For instance, modern web browsers have this index of method for arrays. Or if you have an array of like 3 things, index of tells you the index of a particular thing in that array. Seems like a really basic thing, but old web browsers don't have that. Like Internet Explorer 8 and down don't have that functionality. So Modernizer builds that in so that Internet Explorer 8 can start using it. Let's see. So that's my soapbox about design. And then after this, I'd like to take a break and come back and start going into Foundation. But before we do that, any thoughts or questions or anything about design? This is where I want to leave the good design conversation. Yeah, Nana. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know any off the top of my head, but I know that I can Google, let's see, Google, wait, no, I don't need to type Google. Web color themes. Let's see what that does. There we go. Yep, the color scheme designer. I've actually seen this referred a bunch of times before. And yeah, you like pick a color you like, and it tells you the ones that work nicely with it. And there are lots of other sites exactly like this. Like there are entire libraries that show color swatches that work nicely together. And if you look at these, you'll probably think like, oh, hey, I've totally seen a website that uses that exact same color scheme before. So, I mean, really just Google it. Unfortunately, it's the same thing I tell you guys for pretty much everything else. Just Google it. Yeah, Laura. Adobe Cooler? Oh, that's interesting.
And you can like, if you have it on your smartphone, you can like take a picture of something and then tell the colors.
Oh, that's really cool. Wow. All right. Thank you. Arash?
Also, I was just thinking that going to art museums, seeing the artworks, the color the artist gives, I think helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
All those books as well. So they have the books of art.
Yeah. Well, and thank goodness we're living in Washington where you have like 8 million free museums everywhere. Oh, someone just slacked that out, it looks like. Anything else? I mean, I really would like to hear from you guys on this because there's so little I know about visual design. So if any of you are like doodlers or sketchers or anything. No? Okay. Well, in that case, let's come back in 8 minutes. So we start at 2:25. But let's take a break.